This goal topic is called finding x and y intercepts given a polynomial function. So let me copy this so that I have more room to do this problem, okay? I'll copy this to another page. The easiest way, I'll tell you what, the easiest way to do this is graphing it, really. If you want to just graph this function in Desmos, but I do want to come back and show you how to do this using factoring method. But let's see that I just go to Desmos graphing calculator, because x-intercept and y-intercept, they're just points on the x and y axis. So look, I can type f of x equals x to the third minus 2x squared plus 4x minus 8, and here's the graph, okay? I can see that we have, I'm going to try to zoom out because I don't want to miss any points. So this graph has an x-intercept at 2. So I'll write that down on my paper here, okay? We have an x-intercept at x equals 2. We have a y-intercept at down at negative 8. So y-intercept at negative 8. So if you just want to get the answer from graphing, that's what you can do. But the purpose of this lesson is really just to graph a function without a graphing calculator. So how do you find these if you don't have a graphing calculator? I'll show you how to do this, okay? So to find the easier one first, to find the y-intercept, plug in x equals 0. Why is that gotta be true? Think about this for me. What's special about points on the y-axis? All right, let's say that's my x-axis and y-axis. So that's the y-axis. To be called the y-intercept, you have to be on the y-axis, right? So something like this point, like a point right there, like a point like this. You see what I mean? Like if you are on the y-axis, you get to be called the y-intercept. So the points that, what they have in common is their x value has to be 0. Okay, to be on the y-axis, the x has to be 0, because if x is like a positive one, then you end up going to the right. You're going away from the y-axis. If x is negative, then you go to the left. So you're not going to be on the y-axis anymore. So if you want to find y-intercept, plug in x equals 0, because that's the condition it needs to meet to be on the y-axis. So take a look at this. All I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this function and plug in x equals 0. Okay, so that will be 0 cubed. All right, so I'll say y equals 0 cubed minus 2 times 0 squared plus 4 times 0 minus 8. Now look at these first 3 fun terms here. That's going to turn into 0. That's going to turn into 0. And that's going to turn into 0. What's the only thing left that we have that's not in a turn that didn't turn into 0? Well, negative 8. So that's how we can confirm that the graphing calculator was right. The y-intercept is at y equals negative 8. And for y-intercept, you will only always have one y-intercept. Because if you have two y-intercept, that graph is not going to pass the vertical line test. That's not a function anymore. So that's how you can find the y-intercept. Now, how about x-intercept? Okay, to find the x-intercept, plug in. Now, if you want to keep x, but you want to be on the x-axis, not up or not down, the y value better be equal to 0. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to set, because f of x, that's a fancier name for y value, right? The output value. So what you do is you really just find the 0 of this polynomial by setting the entire function equal to 0. Now, I did post some extra videos on factoring this week, because in order for you to solve this cubic polynomial, you will need to know how to factor this. So when you see 4 terms, I count 4 terms. Take a look. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I have 4 terms. I'm going to factor this by grouping. In order to factor this by grouping, cut that polynomial in half right after the second term, okay? To the left, move this a little bit to the left. Give me 1 second. I'm going to move this guy a little bit to the left. And what you do is you take the GCF, the greatest factor, out from each half. X cubed and 2x squared. Their greatest common factor is x squared. So what I will do is I'll divide both of these by x squared. Okay? That dividing x squared will go to the front. And inside, I'm going to write down the leftover. What's x cubed divided by x squared? Well, 3 minus 2 is 1. So you will just have x to the first power left. But look, if it's x to the first power, you really don't have to put the exponent of 1. So I'll just write x. Minus, look at this. What is 2x squared divided by x squared? Well, x squared cancels out, right? The only thing that's left is 2. All right, let's move to the second half of this. 4 and 8. What is their common factor? What can you divide 4 and 8 by? Well, I can divide them by positive 4, right? So I will put positive 4 outside and let me put the remainder here or the quotients here. 4x divided by 4 is just x. Copy down the minus sign. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Now look, if you did something right, you're going to end up seeing the same factor twice. Do you see how you have x minus 2 written down? So what you're going to do is you're going to factor out that x minus 2. You're going to bring it to the front. Now if you bring that to the front, what is left? That's not factored out. Well, you still have x squared and plus 4, right? Those make their own parenthesis. X squared plus 4. Okay? Now, we're done factoring. You set this equal to 0. So now let's solve each of these factors equal to 0. Let's set these equal to 0. So when I do x minus 2 equals 0, I can add 2 to both sides and get the first x-intercept to be x equals positive 2. Yay! Now let's solve the other one. If you solve x squared plus 4 equal to 0, I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides, right? Minus 4, minus 4. But if I do that, we're going to run into a problem because we now have a sentence that says x squared is equal to negative 4. Can you square a number and get negative 4? Well, not really, right? Because squaring means you're multiplying something by itself, the same thing. So you either multiply positive times positive, but that's going to give you a positive number. But if you multiply a negative times negative, again, that's going to turn into positive. So will the sign of a square term ever be equal to negative? No, never. So this is where we have to say no solution. But let's say that you did not realize and you go ahead and take a square root of it. Okay, if you take square root of that, then you do have to put plus or minus. But I just want to show you what will happen if you type in square root of negative 4 on your calculator. Square root of negative 4. Look, undefined. This is an imaginary number. Okay, you're not allowed to have negative number as a radicand. That's not a real number. And especially if you're trying to have an x-intercept, that's got to be a real number so that we can plot it, you know. So, this branch of the equation will not lead us anywhere. So, no solution from this branch. So, that's why all this good work got us the only x-intercept of x equals 2. And is that the answer? Yes, we saw that. See, we're trying to do what the graphing calculator is doing ourselves by doing some algebra practice. Like this one was called factoring by grouping. If you want to watch more videos on factoring by grouping, I posted them on Canvas module. So go and find it because this can be very, very useful if you have 4 terms. I have another problem just like this, but I'm going to go ahead and start a new video to go over this second example, okay?